My name is Dr. Emily Carter. I'm 43 years old. I've spent nearly 2 decades working emergency medicine. I've pronounced people dead. I've brought people back. I've watched families fall apart in waiting rooms. I've delivered babies in parking lots. I've worked 30-hour shifts powered by bad coffee and stubbornness. And somehow, none of that impressed my family. To them, I wasn't a doctor. I was just Emily, the disappointing daughter, the quiet sister, the one who never seemed important enough. My older brother Ryan was the opposite. Ryan was the golden child, always had been, even when we were kids. Ryan scored a touchdown, family barbecue. Ryan got accepted into college, huge celebration. Ryan bought a fishing boat. My mother acted like he'd discovered electricity. Meanwhile, I graduated medical school. My mother mailed me a congratulations card 3 weeks late. No party, no dinner, no celebration, just a card. That's when I should have understood. In my family, achievement wasn't what mattered. Attention did, and Ryan always got it. By the time we were adults, nothing had changed. Ryan owned a successful landscaping company outside Cincinnati. He wasn't rich, but he did well. My mother talked about him constantly. Every phone call somehow became about Ryan. Ryan's new truck, Ryan's vacation, Ryan's house, Ryan's kids, Ryan's lawn. I wish I was joking. One Thanksgiving, I spent 12 hours in surgery helping save a teenager after a horrific accident. I arrived late to dinner, exhausted, still wearing hospital scrubs under my coat. My mother looked at me and said, "Emily, you're late." That was it. No questions, no interest, nothing. 5 minutes later, she spent 20 minutes discussing Ryan's new riding mower. A riding mower. That was my family. And honestly, by my 40s, I'd accepted it. Or at least I thought I had. Then came the lake party, the party that changed everything. It happened last summer. Ryan's oldest son, Noah, had just turned 12. Ryan rented a large lake house for the weekend. Family gathered from 3 different states: aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, friends, about 50 people altogether. The moment I arrived, I already knew how the weekend would go. My mother met me in the driveway. "Emily." She hugged me, then immediately looked around. "Ryan's inside? Did you see his new boat?" Of course. Not hello, not how are you, how's work. The boat. Always the boat. I smiled. "Good to see you too, Mom." She didn't even notice. Inside the house, people laughed, drank beer, and watched baseball. America in summer. Everybody seemed happy. For a while, I relaxed. I played cornhole, talked with cousins, helped set up food. Normal family stuff. Then, around noon, one of Ryan's business friends arrived, a loud guy named Chuck, the type who never met a microphone he didn't like. My mother immediately started introducing everyone. Then she pointed at me. "And this is Emily." Chuck smiled politely. "What do you do?" Before I could answer again, my mother laughed. "Oh, Emily likes babysitting grown-ups at the hospital." Several people chuckled. I forced a smile. Chuck laughed too. "So you're a nurse?" Before I could answer again, Mom nodded. "Basically." The room laughed again. My stomach tightened. Not because being a nurse is something to be ashamed of. Nurses are heroes. Half the doctors in America would fall apart without them. But I wasn't a nurse. I was an emergency physician, and my own mother knew that. She just didn't care enough to say it. Ryan overheard. He grinned. Emily always liked playing doctor. More laughter. I looked down at my drink. Part of me wanted to correct them. Part of me wanted to leave. Instead, I stayed quiet, because arguing never changed anything. And honestly, I was tired. Tired of fighting for respect. Tired of explaining myself. Tired of hoping my family would someday see me. So I let it go. Or at least I tried. Around 3 o'clock, most people moved outside. The lake sparkled under the sun, kids swam near the dock, adults grilled burgers, country music played from speakers. For a moment, everything seemed perfect. Then I noticed something. Noah, Ryan's son. He wasn't near the dock anymore. I scanned the water. Nothing. My stomach tightened instantly. Emergency medicine teaches you something. You stop seeing what people expect. You start seeing what they're missing. Everyone imagines drowning looks dramatic. It doesn't. Most of the time, it's silent. Terrifyingly silent. I stood up, looked again. Still nothing. Then I saw movement farther out. A small hand. Then gone. Then up again. Then gone. My heart dropped. I was already running before anyone else noticed. Someone shouted behind me, "Emily?" I dove off the dock. Cold water hit me like a wall. I swam hard. Years of training, years of instinct, years of emergency response. Everything took over. The hand disappeared again. I reached the spot, went underwater, and saw him. Noah, sinking, eyes closed, not moving. For one horrifying second, I thought I was too late. I grabbed him, kicked upward, broke the surface. People were screaming now. Ryan was running down the dock. I dragged Noah to shore, laid him flat. No pulse, no breathing. The world narrowed. Nothing existed except that boy. I tilted his head, started CPR. 1 compression, 2, 3, 4. "Come on, kid, come on." People cried around me. Someone called 911. Ryan was shaking. My mother looked frozen. I kept working. Again, again, again. Then suddenly, Noah coughed. Water exploded from his lungs. He gasped, a weak, ragged breath. Then another. The crowd erupted. People cried. Ryan collapsed beside his son. I sat back, breathing hard, my hands trembling. The ambulance arrived minutes later. Paramedics checked Noah. One of them looked at me. Recognition flashed across his face. "Dr. Carter?" I nodded. He smiled. "Glad you were here." Then they transported Noah to Mercy Regional Hospital. Ryan insisted everyone go, including me. So an hour later, the entire family filled a hospital waiting room. Noah was stable, alert, expected to recover. The worst appeared over. Everyone kept thanking Ryan, praising Ryan, comforting Ryan. Strangely, almost nobody mentioned me. Not that I needed praise, but it felt familiar. The same old story, the same family, the same Emily. Then the doors opened, and everything changed. A tall man stepped into the waiting room. Gray hair, white coat, authority radiating from every step. The moment I saw him, I recognized him instantly. Dr. Michael Lawson, Chief of Emergency Medicine, my boss, one of the most respected physicians in Ohio. He was walking towards us, fast, directly towards us, towards me. And I suddenly realized my family had absolutely no idea who he was or why he was coming. The waiting room went quiet as Dr. Michael Lawson walked toward us. Not just any doctor, the doctor. The man whose name was on half the hospital's fundraising brochures. The physician who appeared on local news whenever there was a public health crisis. The man who oversaw more than 100 emergency staff members. People moved out of his way automatically. Nurses nodded respectfully as he passed. Residents straightened their backs. Even experienced physicians became a little more careful around him. That's the kind of reputation he had. And right now, he was walking directly toward me. My family didn't understand why yet. Ryan stood first, probably assuming Dr. Lawson had come to update everyone about Noah. "Doctor?" Ryan said nervously. "How's my son?" Dr. Lawson gave a polite nod. He's doing well." The entire family exhaled. My mother actually pressed a hand against her chest. Then Dr. Lawson looked past all of them, directly at me. His face softened. "Emily." I stood. "Michael." My mother blinked. Ryan frowned. Several relatives exchanged confused looks. Dr. Lawson smiled. Then he said words that changed the entire room. "Why are you sitting out here?" The room went silent. He continued, "You should be upstairs." My mother looked confused. "Upstairs?" Dr. Lawson nodded. Then he turned toward my family. "Dr. Carter saved your grandson's life today." Nobody spoke, not even Ryan. The silence became uncomfortable. My mother forced a laugh. "Well, yes, Emily helped until the professionals arrived." Dr. Lawson stared at her. Actually stared. The kind of stare that makes people immediately regret speaking. Then he said, "Mrs. Carter, Emily is the professional." The room froze. Completely, utterly frozen. My mother's face lost color. Ryan blinked several times, like his brain couldn't process what he just heard. Dr. Lawson continued, "Had Dr. Carter not recognized the signs of drowning immediately," he paused, "your grandson would most likely be dead." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. My aunt literally covered her mouth. Ryan looked at me, for the first time all day, really looked at me, not as his little sister, not as background noise, not as somebody sitting quietly in the corner, but as the person who had just saved his son's life. The realization hit him hard. I could see it. Then Dr. Lawson smiled. "Actually," he glanced toward me, "Emily, your timing was incredible." I shrugged. "I got lucky." He laughed. "No." Then his expression turned serious. "You got there because you're one of the best emergency physicians I've ever worked with." The room somehow became even quieter. My mother looked like she'd been hit by a truck. My uncle finally spoke. "Wait," he pointed at me. "Emily's an actual doctor?" Nobody answered, because the answer was obvious. Dr. Lawson did anyway. "Board-certified emergency physician." My aunt gasped. My cousin whispered, "Oh my God." And then my mother made the mistake of trying to explain herself. "Well," she smiled awkwardly, "of course she's a doctor." The lie hung in the air. Everybody heard it. Everybody knew it was nonsense. Dr. Lawson raised an eyebrow. "Really?" Mom's smile faltered. He continued, "Because last year at the hospital charity dinner, you introduced her as a nurse." My heart nearly stopped. I had forgotten about that. Apparently he hadn't. My mother looked horrified. Ryan stared at her. The room shifted subtly, but unmistakably. For the first time in decades, people weren't looking at me differently. They were looking at my mother differently, and she hated it. Dr. Lawson didn't seem interested in saving her. He turned back toward me. "The board heard what happened." I frowned. "The board?" He nodded. "Word travels fast." Then he smiled. "They want to meet the doctor who pulled off a successful water rescue before EMS arrived." Several relatives looked stunned. My cousin Jake whispered, "The hospital board?" I nodded. Ryan looked physically uncomfortable now, because suddenly the story wasn't about him. For perhaps the first time in his life, the spotlight had moved, and it wasn't moving back. Then Noah's pediatric surgeon entered the waiting room. He looked around, saw me, immediately walked over. "Dr. Carter." Another doctor, another greeting, another reminder. My family watched every second. The surgeon shook my hand. "I wanted to personally thank you." I smiled. He did the hard part. The surgeon laughed. "No." Then he glanced toward Ryan. "Your sister gave us a patient who was alive." He lowered his eyes. The surgeon continued, "That doesn't happen without her." Then he left. The waiting room remained silent. The atmosphere had completely changed. My mother suddenly looked very interested in her purse. My aunt looked embarrassed. Ryan looked overwhelmed. And honestly, I didn't enjoy any of it. That's the strange thing. People imagine moments like this feel amazing, like victory, like revenge. But sitting there, watching my family realize who I really was, mostly made me sad, because none of this was new. I'd been a doctor for 17 years. Nothing had changed except their awareness. The accomplishment wasn't new, only their attention was, and that hurt more than I expected. An hour later, Noah was transferred to a private room. Doctors expected a full recovery. Ryan asked if he could speak with me alone. We walked into an empty hallway. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then, "I owe you." I shook my head. "No. You saved my son. I helped him." His eyes became wet. I thought I lost him. For the first time all day, he looked like a father, not the golden child, not the favorite son, just a scared dad. And honestly, my anger softened, because fear strips away ego. Fear reveals people. Ryan looked broken. Then he asked something I never expected. "Emily," I looked at him, "why didn't you tell us?" I almost laughed. "Tell you what? That I was a doctor? That I spent 20 years sacrificing sleep, holidays, relationships, and sanity? That I built a career while everyone else ignored it?" I looked at him quietly, then answered, "I did." Ryan frowned. "What?" "I told you." His expression changed, because suddenly he remembered. Every family dinner, every holiday, every birthday, every conversation nobody listened to, every achievement dismissed, every success overlooked, every moment I tried, and eventually stopped trying. Ryan lowered his head, because he finally understood. The problem wasn't that I never told them. The problem was they never cared enough to hear it. And what happened next would force my mother to confront that truth in front of the entire family. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital expecting a normal shift. Coffee, charts, patients, chaos. Emergency medicine rarely offered anything else. What I didn't expect was my mother waiting in the physician parking lot, standing beside her car, looking nervous. I almost kept walking, not because I was angry, because I was tired, emotionally tired. The previous day had forced decades of family history into the open, and honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted another conversation. But Mom stepped forward. "Emily." I stopped. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she quietly said, "I didn't know." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. Didn't know? I had been a physician for 17 years. 17 years. How could she not know? Then I realized something. She wasn't saying she literally didn't know. She was saying she never paid attention, and those are two very different things. I looked at her. "You knew, Mom." She looked away. Her silence answered everything. Finally, she whispered, "I guess I never really thought about it." That hurt more than any insult, more than any joke, more than being called a babysitter, because it was honest, painfully honest. She hadn't hated my accomplishments. She hadn't rejected them. She simply never cared enough to notice. I nodded slowly, then headed inside. The conversation lasted less than a minute, but somehow said everything. Over the next few weeks, Noah recovered completely. Kids are resilient, thankfully. The doctors cleared him, the specialists cleared him, and life moved forward. Or at least it tried to. For the first time in years, my family started calling, not occasionally, constantly. My aunt wanted lunch, my cousin wanted coffee, my uncle suddenly wanted to know all about my work. The same people who couldn't remember where I worked now wanted details. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I stayed polite, because resentment is exhausting, and frankly, I had patience to worry about. Then came Ryan. One evening, he called unexpectedly. His voice sounded different, quieter, less confident. "Can we talk?" I agreed. We met at a small diner halfway between our homes, the kind of place where retired veterans drink coffee for 3 hours and everybody knows the waitress. Ryan looked older, not physically, emotionally, like something had finally cracked. After a few minutes, he said, "I owe you an apology." I stayed quiet. He continued, "I spent my entire life believing Mom and Dad's version of things. I listened, that I was special." He laughed bitterly. "Turns out I wasn't special." I looked at him. "You were their favorite." He nodded. "Yeah." Then he sighed. "And that's not the same thing." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said something I never expected. "Do you know what Noah told me?" I shook my head. Ryan smiled sadly. He said, "You're his hero." The words hit me harder than I expected, because kids don't care about titles. They don't care about money or status or family politics. Noah only knew one thing. When he needed help, I came. Ryan swallowed hard. "I spent 40 years trying to impress Mom." He looked down. "And my son admires you more than he'll ever admire me." The honesty surprised me. Then he added, "And honestly, I get it." That was the first real conversation we'd ever had, not as competitors, not as siblings fighting for approval, just two adults finally telling the truth. When we left that diner, something had changed, not perfectly, but genuinely. For the first time in our lives, we were becoming brother and sister. 3 months later, the hospital held its annual charity gala, a massive event. Business leaders, politicians, physicians, community donors, several hundred people attended every year. I almost skipped it. I hated formal events. Give me an emergency room over a ballroom any day. But Dr. Lawson insisted, so I went. Halfway through the evening, the Hospital Foundation presented its annual Community Hero Award. Normally, these awards went to donors or executives or local celebrities. I barely paid attention. Then I heard my name. At first, I thought I'd misheard. Then the announcer repeated it, Dr. Emily Carter. The room erupted into applause. I froze, completely, utterly, frozen. Dr. Lawson laughed from across the room, the board members smiled, and suddenly hundreds of people were standing for me. I walked toward the stage in a complete daze. The applause seemed endless. Then I noticed something. Near the back of the room, my family, Ryan, Noah, my mother, my father, all standing, all clapping, and my mother was crying, not polite tears, not dramatic tears, real tears, the kind people cry when they finally understand something they've spent years getting wrong. I accepted the award, made a short speech, thanked my colleagues, thanked the nurses, thanked the paramedics, thanked the people who actually deserved recognition. Then I stepped down. My mother met me before I reached my table. Her eyes were red. She grabbed my hand and said words I'd waited decades to hear. "I'm proud of you." Simple words. 3 words. That's all. But sometimes 3 words carry 40 years of weight. I looked at her and realized something surprising. I believed her. For the first time, I actually believed her. A year after the lake incident, Noah invited me to career day at his school. I agreed immediately. When I arrived, dozens of children filled the gymnasium. Teachers organized presentations, parents talked about their jobs. the usual stuff. Then Noah introduced me. He stood proudly beside me, smiling from ear to ear, and said, "This is my Aunt Emily." I smiled. Then he added, "She's the doctor who saved my life." The room became quiet. My throat tightened, not because of the attention, because of the pride in his voice. The pride I'd spent my whole life seeking from adults, and unexpectedly received from a 12-year-old boy. At that moment, I understood something important. The people who truly love you don't need a title. They don't need awards. They don't need proof. They simply see you, and that's enough. Looking back now, people always ask me if I feel vindicated, if I feel like I won. The truth? No. Because life isn't a scoreboard. This wasn't about beating Ryan, or humiliating my mother, or proving anyone wrong. It was about finally understanding something. You can't spend your life chasing recognition from people determined not to give it, because even if it finally comes, you lose years waiting. The real victory happened long before the lake, long before the hospital, long before the award. The real victory happened the day I stopped measuring my worth by someone else's attention, the day I built a life I was proud of, a life nobody could take away. And maybe that's the lesson. Sometimes the people who underestimate you aren't villains, they're just blind. And eventually, life opens their eyes. The question is whether you'll still be standing there when it happens. I was. And when my family finally saw me, I no longer needed their approval, which made receiving it feel like a gift instead of a necessity. And honestly, that made all the difference. The end.